Everybody would like to have a little bit of a heads up so that they can plan. A lot of these integration companies are a couple of weeks out on their schedule anyway. It would be ideal to have those conversations and say, hey, we haven't started the electrical rough yet. Now would be a good time to engage the AV company, not drywall starts tomorrow. Could you get some speaker brackets in? A little bit of proper planning can go a long way, right? And it can help ensure that some thought is spent into a more cohesive system, not just, we put some speakers in the ceiling and best of luck.
We'll figure it out later.
We'll solve it in post.
You told me this was gonna look like some kind of giant T-Rex with tentacle arms and laser beam eyes. Fix it in post? This is post!
CEDIA Expo is almost here, so let's talk about crafting an experience working with architects early. And hey, what about Wi-Fi 8? Welcome to ResiWeek episode 497, Crafting a Customer Experience. Welcome to ResiWeek. My name is Patrick Norton. I'm in for Matt Scott of Omega Audio Video, your regular host, but we have a fantastic lineup for you today. Cody Crossland, Blackwire Designs, the distributor dedicated to making it easier and more efficient. Your installs easier and more efficient so you can focus on what you do best. Welcome, Cody.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Patrick.
Thanks for being here. Katye McGregor, Chief Strategist, Content Creator, Communicator. And I have to ask, have there been any more moose infestations in your part of the world?
No, I'm sad to report that it's they're out on the trails, but they're not in the house.
I feel like
that's good. Actually, I'm not sad to report that. I'm very happy to report that.
A lot of glass in that wall behind you. I don't know how the moose and the glass are going to work together.
Doing. That's how that works.
And then the cracking and the screaming and the cat. There's always a cat that wants to take on a moose. This is a story about residential integrations. Or this is a podcast about residential integrations. So we should probably, as much as I want to talk about moose infestations, or we could talk about pig infestations in Texas, Cody, if you're far enough out. But my obsession with animals terrifying humans aside, we're a residential integration podcast. Jason McGraw penned Smarter Living Starts Here, How Integrated AV is Redefining the Modern Home. And this is an interesting one for me. I cherry-picked a couple lines here, and Katye and Cody are going to kind of bring me back in, but he claims the modern luxury home is no longer defined solely by square footage, bespoke finishes, or location. Today's high-end residences are increasingly evaluated by their intelligence, how seamlessly technology enhances lifestyle, comfort, and convenience with integrated AV technology at its heart. And my snarky reading aside, Katye, as you pointed out, we were talking earlier, this is all about making AV work for the client. Or if I were to go full North Jersey, making AV not suck. And it's also a much broader definition of I guess a huge part of this column was actually, it's not just AV anymore. It's the networking, it's the security, it's the HVAC system. It's making it all work together and making it work together through an interface that doesn't drive your client insane. Where do we start with this? Is this a call to action for the entire industry to start thinking about how this all goes together much earlier and much more thoroughly?
I don't know that it's so much a call to action, but I think I see this as a very intentional article that was written to reach beyond our little industry, little piece of the pie that we currently have, to continue to bang on the drum and create a louder drum beat about the nature of the work that we do that really is much more expansive. Now, just calling it AV, we're stabbing ourselves in the foot. It really is, it's the central nervous system of the home. In many cases, it's the digital foundation of the home. And all of those roads should lead to integrators. And so, it's articles like this that, regardless of how they're structured, this one is definitely looking to drive traffic to CEDIA Expo that's coming up. And, Jason obviously is the VP over that business unit. And so he's got a reason to be writing these articles. But, from a residential integration community perspective, we all benefit when more people understand that all of the things, including your networking, your security, and the importance of those baseline factors. But then also, too, we work on the ambiance, we can do lighting, we can do shading, we can do entertainment. And I think that's the thing, is just when you look at the constant message from the integration community in residential specifically, it's we want to be in on projects earlier, we need to be there more often, and we need the trades to understand what we bring to the table. And these kind of articles really start to, they collectively become a match strike moment, and we desperately need it because our piece of the pie gets smaller and smaller when fewer consumers care or know what we do, and custom install is custom for a reason. It's custom and it's personalized, and that's pretty cool. That's the modern residence, whether luxury or otherwise, should be customized and personalized so that it's enjoyable on every level. That's just my opinion.
Cody, you're nodding along. Are you you're on the distribution side of things. I mean, and this is a question, I guess, for both of you, but obviously trade shows like CEDIA, and one of the funny things is while I was kind of amused because while, Mr. McGraw was penning this article, and reaching out to architects and other people in the biosphere, I'll use that phrase for some strange reason, but when I look at this, I also laugh because one of the biggest events at CEDIA this year is the $1 million home theater, and I laugh because like the first $1 million home theater I saw was a pair of $400,000 speakers, a really mediocre projector, and a really unfortunate tuning of the room. Let's just say, right? But it's funny that despite the fact that CEDIA is trying to make itself about so much more, that one of the big draws of this is a home theater. And I guess probably because you can't pull an entire well-integrated home with all of the bells and whistles, even into a massive space. How do we sell this to the clients? How do you reach out? How do you tell this story where you're like, okay, I'm going to set a scene, I'm going to paint a picture, you come home and this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens, where does that start? Does it start with the vendors? Does it start with the clients? Does it start with the integrators? Or does everybody, pedal as fast as they can until this takes off?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that this can happen. I do have some experience as a previous integrator before joining Blackwire as a distributor. And I think the conversations need to happen as early as possible between the integrator and the client, the homeowner, right? Because ultimately the client's going to be able to indicate what their desires are, right? Are they working from home a lot? Do they entertain a lot? What do they want to be able to do from a functional perspective, but also enjoy in their home? What do they like? Because a lot of times we'll have conversations with integrators who are saying, I'm not doing theaters or video distribution anymore. That's changed, right? A lot of folks are working from home in the last 5 years, right? That's a significant shift in what's been happening at home that normally wasn't. Normally enterprise networking was something that happened at the office, right? And now networking is so important, not just for working at home, but for everything that happens, including entertainment and streaming now, because everybody's cut the cord. Networking is one of those things that, we try to push services and education early, like heat mapping, so that we can get the access points in the right places for that great coverage, but also keeping into consideration that nobody wants to see a big access point right in the middle of the master bedroom ceiling, right? That may be technically the best place for it, but aesthetically, not so much, right? My wife would not approve. So, the networking is going to be something that is going to be important because it's the first thing that people complain about when it doesn't work, but it's the last thing that people compliment when it does work because it just blends into the background. And it's just a thing that happens and people take for granted.
Yeah. And I definitely agree. And I think Cody's comments were spot on. And the network is the one that I think it's universal. But what also is really funny about that is how often, and even our personal circles, go to somebody and say how important is technology in your home life, and most will say, "Oh my God, I hate technology. I don't want it." But then you go, but you do like to do work, and you like to listen to your music, and you do like to do the things, right? Yeah, I love all of that. Okay, so there is this love-hate relationship that I think will continue in perpetuity for forever. So part of our challenges in integration community is how do we breach that subject of technology and, have it, love it or hate it, it's going to be part of your life. And I mean, unless you're in a tiny house in a cabin in the middle of Yellowstone, 80 miles from here, see, I weaved that in, huh? You're going to need internet. I mean, you're not going to get it there unless you do something really quite complex. But, it's funny because it's just such a fundamental part of it that I think as we start to look at how do we shift the conversation to continue to build our business in the future and not lose it is those really fundamental aspects that are now part of our daily life. So how can we accommodate that? So it's kind of, that customized and personalized thing. I think it comes back to that is you need the home to respond to your needs or the needs of the occupants, whoever they may be, multi-generational also,
It's funny because there's so many parallels that, the organization I work for is primarily commercial. But at this point, it's amusing, ironic, intriguing how many of the challenges are the same. The biggest one that stands out to me, especially at this level in the consumer space or the residential space, is getting in early with architects. And there's a really good CE Pro article. They talked about a recent development for, it's a Palm Beach, it's a condo. Client brought in the integrator they worked for or that had worked for them on a previous project. And one of the things they talked about was getting them in early with the architect. And I think about that a lot because you see the cost, on the commercial side, okay, a lot of times it's older building, but a lot of time it's new construction and AV is an afterthought. And you start looking at it's like explaining to somebody that we have to cut an 8-inch wide, 4-inch deep trench before you put the flooring down so we can run the cable. And by the way, we need to move a spectacular amount of heat out of a closet, which you don't have. Is the outreach, there's the AIA, there's, in sort of a larger sense, and I'm sure CEDIA is working hard on that. But, how do you develop relations, any recommendations for developing relationships with architects or when you're working with clients to sort of, you just constantly remind them if they're designing something from the ground up, can you please get me involved in that process? I wouldn't even get into the whole concept of glass rooms because I had a friend of mine, actually ironically was in Florida in a massive condominium and had 35 feet of glass. And he's like, my music sounds awful. And I'm like, how do you feel about curtains? And he's like, but I'm like, well, you see, the glass is reflecting the audio and we can't really fix physics. So we probably have to fix your room. How do you start building those relationships, and walking them through the basics of what it takes to get one of these systems built?
Yeah, I think it could be something as simple as just, engaging with, the architecture firms that work with the builders that, if the builders aren't doing it and they're engaging an outside firm, find out who that is. And, maybe it's something as simple as, extending an olive branch with some donuts and just say, hey, I'm the AV integrator, right? We work together with this mutual customer. We have some ideas about how we can make the integrations even better, right? To your point about the audio acoustics, like the next time we have a project that's coming up and somebody wants to have, really great audio experience in the media room, let's not make half the walls of the media room glass so that you can see it from the other side. Let's maybe take some other things in consideration. Maybe it's a situation where they've got to do, the staggered studs and the double drywall with green glue and some other things to kind of take that into consideration. That may be something that the architect doesn't think of on their own, right? They're trying to meet a budget or a certain goal, things like that, a certain end result. And maybe they don't have any of the experience that the integrator does, say, hey man, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So let's learn from our experiences and work together to come to that solution that's both, beneficial for the architect, the builder, making their lives easier, and then also for the customer, because you get it right the first time, at least easier that way when everybody's able to engage in the beginning, right? A lot of times I know that integrators don't get that lucky. There's some of them that work with builders and they're lucky if they get floor plans, right? We've had folks come to us and they're like, hey, I need a heat map. And we're like, okay, so get us a floor plan of what you've got. And there's like no scale, or maybe it's drawn on like a piece of paper or something like that. So I do know that, in a lot of cases, being able to engage early is a luxury, just like getting floor plans is a luxury, right? Because usually it's a situation where the integrator could be brought in, the house is already framed, electrical, HVAC is already done with their rough and plumbing, right? And then they're like, oh, by the way, it would be really cool, 16 speakers and 8 video zones and all this stuff. And by the way, drywall's in 2 weeks. We'll pay you when you're done, right? And then everybody's kind of scrambling to figure out how they can make this work, right? So, it can be an afterthought.
I got to ask, did you make it work on that project? And how much better would it have been if you'd gotten like I don't know, an extra 3 weeks, much less an extra 3 months in a set of floor plans.
It involves a lot of phone calls, a lot of favors are being pulled, schedules being rearranged and stuff. It is possible to do, but yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody that really enjoys the high of the last minute rush, right? I mean, it's very stressful.
At least hopefully not after 30.
Yeah. I mean, we're 30 years in the industry, right? So it's kind of a situation where, everybody would like to have a little bit of a heads up so that they can plan. A lot of these integration companies are a couple of weeks out on their schedule anyway, especially with service, right? So it would be ideal to have those conversations and say, hey, we haven't started the electrical rough yet. Now would be a good time to engage the AV company, not drywall starts tomorrow. Could you get some speaker brackets in? So a little bit of proper planning can go a long way, right? And it can help ensure that some thought is spent into a more cohesive system, right? Different aspects of it working together, how you're going to control the system, not just, we put some speakers in the ceiling and best of luck.
We'll figure it out later.
We'll solve it in post.
And I think too that there's part of the process is you're not going to get in early on the projects until you know the players, the trades, right? So I think part of it is riding along, and whenever you're in, being gracious and appreciative of whenever they bring you in. But then I think it's how you follow up to that experience and educate them on the other side. Do a debriefing on the other side of the project. Say, okay, so here's the thing: is you brought us in 3 weeks from buttoning up the project, and we were able to do some stuff, but to really understand what we're capable of and how your clients in the future might benefit in a better capacity. If we were to break down the project, here's a different timing of when you bring us in, and here's the advantages and the opportunities for doing that. Conversely, if you're ever in a crunch, we can come in 3 weeks, but here's the expectation set that you need to kind of be thinking of at that point. In that capacity, you become a much better partner, and they can start thinking about not just the person that you're talking to, but all of the other teams as well. We do a lot of work with SAV, particularly here in Montana, but they're, Jackson facility as well. They work really closely with the builders, and they do a lot of sessions where they bring in the builder and the architect and somebody on the design team, maybe a project manager, better yet, a site supervisor in that room, and bring in one of the manufacturers. Those foundational manufacturers have been doing a lot in the energy management space, and getting those trades to understand the importance of really the critical role that power is playing. And then once you get them hooked on that, then they understand the network has to be part of that early conversation. You're not going to get them to be open to it until you've been through a few projects. And I think that's the thing, is we get really impatient. We want, we want to keep doing the same thing and getting a different result, and that's never going to happen. You've got to go through a few projects and then, show where you could be better partner in the future if then statements.
And I think to that point too, there's some other conversations that Jason illustrates in his article where he's talking about the ecosystem living together. Having these earlier conversations mean that, you have an opportunity as the integrator to have discussions with the HVAC folks, for example, right? If you want everything to talk together in one app, depending on the system that you're using, there may be certain thermostats or HVAC systems that are compatible with the system that you're using. So before that system is actually designed and installed and it's already too late, right? You can say, hey, Mr. HVAC guy, are you putting in a train? Are you putting in, something else, right? A Carrier Infinity, whatever, right? Have those conversations so that you can know ahead of time, hey, we figured out that there is a solution to be able to integrate it. Where if you're brought in too late, now that one particular part of the ecosystem has to live separately, right? Because now it requires a proprietary app or it's just not compatible. Being able to get in early in the game means you're able to have conversations and figure out some of those solutions so that it can be in that cohesive app that everybody wants.
It's also kind of amazing when it works, is because I still, the impact of blinds, like thermal blinds, coming down and going up. Like if you're not watching the video, there's a lot of heads nodding right now. I've lived in a lot of older homes. I've lived in, some basically colonial era homes where they were designed around thermal efficiency as it was determined in the time. For example, deciduous trees in front of the south wall, and the south wall was facing the sun. So it was harder to freeze in the winter. And it's, and you get so much more sophisticated, we hope, in the 21st century. And I am still fascinated. I clocked a room in Vermont, and we put in thermal curtains, and it was astonishing the difference, in the interior temperature of the room. And it's if this is actually planned out ahead and everything works together, you can also vastly reduce the energy consumption of your home. You can make everything work better, which I guess contributes back to the experience you want to cultivate for the client. I want to see it all work.
Don't we all? That's why the integrator needs to be involved early and often. There's your segue right on out of that one.
Done. All right, shifting gears. Wi-Fi 8. CE Pro teased this. It's all over the internet, right? Because 802.11bn, if you're old school, has been announced. Doesn't expect to have a final spec until 2028. So, as I like to joke, we'll see the first routers that have Wi-Fi 8 on the label next year. Some of them will actually be compatible with the final ones that come out in 2028.
So you're old enough to remember Draft N then.
Oh, yeah.
And look, now this is 802.11bn, not to be confused with 802.11b or 802.11n.
Yeah, I
couldn't have picked any other letters.
I have literally 30 years of experience with wireless. Don't get me started. I also want to point out to any of a number of people in the universe that, yes, you actually need to secure your networks, which is something actually that was brought up in the article we were talking about earlier that Jason McGraw penned, is people actually really need to think seriously about security on their networks, especially if you are dealing with people that are on the higher end of the executive or wealthy people area of things. It's really embarrassing when it turns out your light bulb choice was the entry point for a hacker to do something nefarious. And it sounds like a joke.
Colors.
Don't
it was the best
started. Well, I
it was on sale on Amazon.
I used to share an office with some people that did network security for a living at a very high end. And, we used to joke about why, light bulbs should not be a vector for an attack. And it got really not funny when people actually figured out an attack through a brand of light bulbs. Don't buy the cheap ones off Amazon. That's all I'm going to say. So Wi-Fi 8, we don't have a final spec until 2028. Qualcomm's claiming that we're going to see 25% higher throughput in poor signal conditions, 25% lower latency, and 25% fewer dropped packets with roaming. There will be an AI element or probably more of a machine learning element to it. And it's necessary to meet the demands of AI-powered and medical monitoring devices. Their whole story is about reliability on this one. And, because on one hand, I laugh because nurses get pissed when your heart monitor falls off the network. But as we look around, especially in environments like hospitals, the level of interference and congestion on the available bandwidth are pretty miserable at this point, and they're just going to get worse.
I think it was great that, we're seeing the shift from 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, into the 6 channel space, which is a little less utilized. And, that was something that was very welcome. I think that, the speed benefit of Wi-Fi 7 is going to take a little bit to realize, because I think it hasn't quite sunk in for several people yet that in order to get the speeds promised by Wi-Fi 7, you're going to have to be in the same room as the AP. This isn't anything like 2.4 where you can be out in the driveway, 150 feet away from your AP and still have a bar on your phone. So the speed benefit of 7 was nice, but personally, I'm looking forward to 8 specifically for the reduced latency, for, the survivability of your transmissions and reception of your signal and things like that. So it's nice to put, I guess I call Wi-Fi 8 a quality control rather than, a speed improvement, right? So it'll be good to have some of that reliability baked into the standard. We'll have some time before we get there. So, it'll be important to make sure that your cabling that you're putting in your houses now is going to be up to spec. It's gotta have to be 10 gig and PoE++ capable. So make sure you're not pulling Cat5e anymore. Everybody's been getting away with it for a long time, but just because you can doesn't mean you should, because Wi-Fi 8 is going to be here before we know it. I mean, I say that at the end of 2025 here, but it'll be soon, and people will want the upgrade especially if they're in MDUs and, to your point, hospitals and some environments like that where co-channel interference is a thing, and you're just going to have to figure out ways to mitigate around that.
So I think this is a perfect opportunity for the integration community to connect with the design build community and also those in resi-commercial space. Now's the time to start having a conversation, get in front of the need and the timeline, and just let them know Wi-Fi 8 is coming. Here's the implications. Here's the opportunities, benefits. Based on the work that you do, we should probably make sure that your team is aware. We'd love to schedule time with you to walk you through some of the benefits and the implications and things that you need to start designing around. Like, that's the way to be a great partner and get in front of the things.
You're an education resource. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
No, it's been interesting. Watching as the orthogonal frequency division multiple access, that's a really hard one. Because off the buh also just does not sound good, but it's been funny to watch the promise of that from 6 kind of really get fulfilled with 7, and I'm very, very curious to see how 8 works out in the field. I also feel like I haven't been horrified by any major Wi-Fi upgrades in several years.
So you're looking forward to this? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if the AGN process and N is still something that just it is nice to have witnessed the last several evolutions of Wi-Fi and not looked at any of them with memories of pain and horror or
specific PTSD.
Yeah. Well, when you upgrade a network and everything is slower and video starts dropping out on your home theater, this is not what I would call an optimal experience.
So I've got a question for you with regards to this now. So, seeing these promises of what they're hoping to achieve in Wi-Fi 8 as a standard, do you think that people would skip over Wi-Fi 7 to the degree of, like, you remember how, don't forget, there's a Wi-Fi 6E, but nobody really did anything with it. So do you think that, folks that are upgrading now to like a Wi-Fi 6 specification will wait and then go to 8 to take advantage of those benefits rather than stepstone it from 7 to 8?
I'm torn on that one because as somebody with a couple of teenagers, I'm painfully aware of how fast 2 years goes by. But as somebody who's been watching successive evolutions of Wi-Fi, it still astonishes me how many places are still several generations behind. I was laughing because a fairly famous video vendor who shall remain nameless at the moment was like, they just released a new box a while back and it's still 1080p. And I'm like, wow, 4K HDR, are we going to do anything about that? In these spectacular, I guess it astonished me at this point how many devices are a couple generations behind on the current Wi-Fi technology. So, I would like to see everything up to the latest and greatest. I'm also painfully aware that a lot of organizations it's a wait and see, will there be devices out there? Will there be, the networking support for this? Are we ahead of the game? It's easy for somebody manufacturing laptops to be like, we've got the latest version of Wi-Fi. But when you get into longer design cycles than like 12 to 24 months, I feel like it's a much bigger challenge for an organization to commit to something that maybe isn't baked yet.
Yeah, I found it was interesting this time around that it felt like we had Wi-Fi 7 access points to a much greater availability than we had Wi-Fi 7 clients this time around.
Yes.
So it's like everybody wants Wi-Fi 7, but nobody really has anything to take advantage of it just yet, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting in the cycle, at least seeing it from a distribution point. We're selling Wi-Fi 7 APs like crazy, which is great.
Yeah.
But I'm like, what do you guys doing with it? Are you doing like VR or anything cool? And they're like, we want the bigger number. It's like, okay. Are you also cabling for this access point? Is your switches, on the head end and your MDFs and IDFs and AV closets, right? Are those up to spec so that you can take full advantage of that? That's a whole ecosystem conversation too. So it's been kind of interesting with the Wi-Fi 7 rollout.
I feel like I know a bunch of people who are super geeks who have 10 gigabit switches in their closet, and everybody else is like, I might need to go beyond a gigabit.
Yeah.
Mike.
Go beyond. Dun, dun, dun. Journey.
Slowly but surely. Anything you guys are looking forward to at CEDIA, or any exciting news you want to share with what's going on in your professional lives before we bring this episode to a wrap?
CEDIA for me is always a great time to get in touch with other vendors and manufacturers and our integration partners and just see some face-to-face time, right? I think there's a lot of that can happen whether you're actually breaking bread together or, just seeing each other in person. It goes a long way for these interpersonal relationships. So I'm glad that, we get the opportunity to do that and to meet existing customers and new customers as well. So that's always great just to put some faces to the name. So I'm always excited about that. So be sure to stop by and say hi to us if you get a chance.
I think, it's interesting. CEDIA Expo this year, or CIX, it's not going to be a shiny metal box show, right? I mean, it's just not. There's not going to be a lot of new shiny metal boxes, but the reason to go is to have the face time and have the networking time. And it's funny when you think about what we enjoy the most at a trade show. Ask anybody when we're there and it's like, oh my God, it's the time together and it's a thing, right? The conversations in the hallways, or in the bar at night. I mean, things take place at trade shows like this that don't easily transpire on a Zoom, on a Riverside, on a phone call. I mean, it really, there's so much more that you can achieve by being in the same place at the same time with the community doing the same kind of thing, and so it's interesting. We always get to this 2 weeks out kind of point. It's like, go, not go. I mean, not for other people. I have to go. It's like, go, not go. It's like, how can you not go? Because you're going to start seeing the feeds and everything in the middle of the week and you're going to have FOMO. So you might as well just go. Plus there's things on the fringe that are changing. And so, like we were just talking through the whole networking side, like why would you choose not to go to an event like this when you can pick up additional education that's going to help you potentially differentiate your business and maybe get a job that somebody else lesser qualified might get because of the perception, right? So like, I don't know. It seems like the obvious thing, but I always enjoy going to the CEDIA Awards, and that's a biggie for me because it's the celebration of the projects, like the best of what we can do from the community for those who submit, and more should submit. But it's cool to see, yeah. And then I always enjoy having the conversations afterwards. Like, okay, so tell me how that project really went down. Like the good, bad, and ugly. I want to hear it all. Get some pretty pictures. Don't tell the story. Totally. Yeah.
When somebody's getting an award and they've got the 1,000-yard stare, and you're like, oh,
it was one of those. How hard did that one
Tell
buck?
me about the pineapple can that you used as a spacer to get the mount inside the wall to work, right? And then they covered it up with drywall, and nobody knows anything about it. It's fine, totally fine.
How many windows did you have to take out to get that display in or the thing in? I mean, like all the stuff. It's just those are the cool stories.
It's amazing what we do with a crane and a saw.
Exactly. Wide open budget and a crane. Let's do this.
It's only money.
It's only money. I mean, think of the experience on the other side. Generations will enjoy this.
Oh, you hope.
Yeah.
And then they redecorate it next year.
Right. Just rip it out and redo it. It's all good.
Well, there is a margin there. Oh, my goodness. Cody Crossland. BlackWireDesigns.com is the website. Where can people track you if they want to learn more, hear more, see more, or just generally stalk you on the interwebs?
That's a great place to start. BlackWireDesigns.com always has the latest and greatest information. You can find us on social media as well, Instagram. But if you find me at CEDIA this year and you mention that you made it all the way to the end of this podcast, I'll buy you a beer.
That sounds like a deal.
Now I feel like I have to do the same thing. This is not fair.
No one's getting pressed into a corner. Katye McGregor, KMB.com. Where can people follow you on the interweb?
LinkedIn is usually the best place. KMB Communications. We're the ones with the mountains and the logo. So find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, all the places. So.
Oh my goodness. Cody, Katye, thank you. Oops,
Cody will buy you a beer as well if you mentioned that you also heard that I was on this podcast. He'll buy you 2 beers. Won't you, Cody?
No problem. The check's in the mail,
I'm kidding.
right?
I'm kidding.
As the temporary host of ResiWeek in for Matt D. Scott, I would like to point out that there may be no beers at all at CEDIA, but Cody did promise one, and Katye is torturing him with a monster expense account write-off.
Don't make me drink a Miller Lite by myself. That's all I'm saying.
No, man. There's going to be a lot of booths with booze. So, you just have to take a little walk in the afternoon. You shall find beer.
You're like, yeah, they're right over there.
Exactly.
Will you get me one while you're there?
Right. I'll buy you one from, whose booth are we in? D-Tools? Okay, yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. That's how you do it. Sorry, Tim. It's going to happen.
Functional relationships have been started with less tools and motivations. Oh, my goodness.
Got to be resourceful. That's what we're all about here on the channel.
Oh, Katie, Cody, thank you so much. And for everyone who's thinking, my goodness, can this Patrick guy stop talking? I can. Matt will be back next week. And thank you all for listening to this episode of ResiWeek. If this is your first episode, do yourself a favor, search on your favorite podcatching tool and subscribe to ResiWeek so you don't miss an episode.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hello, this is Steve Greenblatt, host of AVNation's A State of Control podcast. Each month, Rich Fregosa and I explore trending topics related to control programming and automation in the audiovisual industry. We speak with a variety of AV professionals who share their perspectives, knowledge, and experiences. Please join us for this monthly conversation. Check out A State of Control on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.